Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Indieauthor Jill, where I read and review indie-authored books. Today we are looking at Crimson, the Chromaveiled by Britt. This is basically Starved all over again. If you don't remember that, or if you're not, if you're relatively new, Starved was a kind of a fantasy retelling of the Irish potato famine, in which the main character was made immortal through a demon, which was basically vampire-esque. They don't necessarily come right out and say that he's a vampire, but he drinks blood to stay alive. He doesn't actually eat food, so to speak. And with that one, the cover alone, I had said in that video, and it was back in like early summer of last year, like late May, early June, I believe, when I did the video for that one. But in that video, I pointed out that if I had seen that cover, you know how sometimes bookstores like Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and whatnot, some books they will turn, instead of being on the shelf like in stacks like this, that they'll like have one on display. This was a book that if I had seen it on display, I would have walked right past it. I would not have picked it up. I wouldn't have even bothered to read the back. And which is a shame, because the back alone was enough to intrigue me to read the book. Even though, very much like these, it was not something that I necessarily chose. Last year, my choosing selection was more a just people recommended their books, and then that's just what I got. Where I was starting out the YouTube channel, and actually I believe Starved was one of the first 10 or 15 books that I got, and I when I bought those, and like I said, my YouTube channel was like really just starting out. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody still probably knows who I am, and that's okay. I'm fine with that, as long as readers and other indie authors are finding the channel and enjoying it, you know, because that's technically who it's for. But it was one of those books that I just, like I said, if I was shopping for books in a bookstore, or even if I was actively choosing the books, like I decided, okay, I'm gonna, like, I could have thousands of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, whatever, recommending their books, and I was just going through and, okay, I'm gonna pick this one based on the cover or whatever. If I was going based solely on the cover, Starved is a book I would not have picked up, because it just didn't look like my type of book. Okay? But because I wouldn't have picked it up, I wouldn't have read the blurb on the back, which means I wouldn't have found out that what the concept was basically, the premise was that it was kind of a fantasy retelling of the Irish potato famine, and as someone who is obsessed with Ireland, that is definitely the kind of book I would read. But the image on the front doesn't give any of that away. It's just a picture of two people, and it does look like... The cover of the book does a really good job in giving you an idea of what is inside the book. It looks like two vampires on the front, and it looks like a romance between these two vampires. And technically that's what Starved is, despite the fact that it is a fantasy retelling of the Irish potato famine, it is a vampire romance. So as far as the cover conveying the story, I think it did a really good job. But like I said, it was one of those books that, based on the cover alone, I would not have picked it up, and I would have missed out on a really great story. And it ended up being one of my favorites from last year. It was not good enough to unseat Rise of the Dragon Witch by Timothy K. Clark, but it was one that I really, really enjoyed, and I was so glad that I ended up getting it. Crimson the Chromaveiled is very much that. What you see on the cover, like, the cover does a really good job of explaining, of showing you what you can expect inside of this book. She is a warrior. She does often use a sword. The armor, I don't, she's not usually wearing a whole lot of, like, this particular armor is not the kind of armor she's wearing in the book. At one point, she's wearing a very thin chainmail and not plate armor. But, but the cover does a really good job of depicting giving you the vibes of what you're going to find inside the book. It is a woman who is wearing a red cloak, who is fighting in a battle, and there is a lot of magic involved. And it just felt like, for me, something that I would not get into. And then, sorry, excuse me. But even as I read and then when I read the book, back of the book, I was more interested, and it's basically, it basically gives a good indication of what you are, what you can expect. She lives in a world of magic and fairy tales and dragons and whatnot, and she leaves the realm and comes to our reality of what she calls, like, our world, Earth, and in a way of, in an effort to get away from the power of Queen, who is trying to control. She's very ill-tempered. She's a very tyrannical ruler, and she wants to get away from that. On Earth, she meets Luke and falls in love with him, and Luke very much wants to get married and have a life with her, and she tells him she can't. It does take a while to get into the whys of why she couldn't marry him while she was on Earth, so I won't go into that because it feels kind of spoilery, but there is a legitimate reason why she couldn't marry him, and there is a legitimate reason as to why she can't tell him why she can't marry him, and that's all explained. But while she is living this life with Luke, and they're trying to be together the only way that they can be, which is just being a couple, an unwed couple that have at least verbally committed them. Like, she knows that she wants to be with him forever. He knows he wants to be with her forever. So for them, that's as far as of a commitment as they can go, is just the knowledge that they want to be together forever. But at one point in time, during, like, 8 years after she has come into this world and met Luke and whatnot, two cloaked figures come and they're looking for her, and she's dragged back into her world, and Luke is dragged into that world with her. And so now that she's back in her world, the restraints of telling her the restraints that were on her that kept her from telling him and answering his questions when they were on Earth are no longer in place. So she can start kind of explaining things to him, but it doesn't matter as far as the whole committing to like getting married and everything. So before they can, it's basically we can't move forward into our lives. We can't move forward into the future until Mel deals with the past. So, with no other option, And she stops running from her past, and she turns and starts facing her past in order to protect her future. Uh, and just on the offset, like, it's like, okay, and a lot of this is told on the back of the blurb, and it explains this, and that's interesting enough. And that's like I said, if I was going by the cover itself, probably wouldn't have picked up the book. I may have stopped and glanced at it, but I probably wouldn't have picked it up and read the blurb. Reading the blurb is like, okay, now I'm a little bit more drawn in, and now I'm more curious about this, because, like, why would you want to, like, for us, we're like the world of fantasy, and where you can have basically not necessarily a pet dragon, but a dragon that you can call friend. Love it. Let you know, I this is a cool world. And even Luke is like, why did you ever leave this place? And so she has to kind of disillusion him, and she's like, look, I know that it seems great and everything, but not, you know. As you get into it, though, what kept me hooked, because I finished this in 3 days. I would have finished this in 2 days, except for I had a job. I have a job. I still have the job. And, like, I had to work. So, I got probably to, I think I got through, in the first day I got to chapter 14. And then the second day I was only able to get through 2 chapters because of work. And then I was actually able, the following day I had a day off, so I finished out the book. And it's, I didn't finish out the book because I wanted to get through it. It wasn't one of those just drag myself through it type things. It was, I could not put the book down. Like, I actually kind of played with the idea of calling into work so I could finish reading the book. But I am a creature of obligation, and so I felt like I had to go to work, even though there's a blizzard going on outside. So, yeah. But yeah, it was that entertaining, and it was entertaining to me for the same reasons that Tales of Arcane of Fortune was, because of the fairy tales. Because, again, she doesn't just come from a world of magic and fantasy, she comes from a world of fairy tales. And as she explains to Luke, that the stories and prophecies that happen here happen, like, some of the stories are just things that happen. Like the story of Alice in Wonderland. It wasn't a prophecy. That was just, this is what happened. And then the story kept getting told and retold and retold, and like a very extreme game of telephone. By the time it got to Earth, it was so skewed that nobody really got the story right. So you do meet Alice in Wonderland, and you do meet Snow White, and you meet Beauty and the Beast, and you meet like, she herself is Little Red Riding Hood. Who else do we meet? I can't remember all of them. I feel like there's more. Even her friend, who she partnered up with for the longest time, I felt like was probably supposed to be Esmeralda from The Hunchback of Notre Dame. But I could be wrong, and Sebra is more than willing to comment and say if she actually had somebody that Nicholas and Sebra were supposed to be. But even the harpies, I wish I could. I hadn't even thought about the harpies, because there's harpies involved in this too. I'm trying to think who they might have been. But I know there's she mentions a mermaid in the court. Is this a series? That would be cool if this would be a series. Because I'd like to get back into this world again. I don't know. But yeah, the way that the stories are told and the way they're skewed, because you go into this and you find out that they got Snow White's description completely wrong. Little Red Riding Hood is quite wrong. And I was kind of hoping that I was really kind of hoping that they were going to get into how Little Red Riding Hood's story, what it actually was, and because we know what it was in we know what it was in what it is here in Earth, where Little Red Riding Hood is going through the forest and she's taking a basket to her sick grandmother, and she meets a wolf in the woods, and she stops and picks some flowers for grandma, and then she gets to the house and finds that instead of grandma she finds the wolf, and they go through the what big eyes you have, what big ears you have, what big teeth you have, and the better to see you with, the better to hear you with, the better to eat you with. And then the hunter comes and saves Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. And you find out, I feel like I know what the story was supposed to be in the story. And again, I don't want to get into spoilers, but knowing where the wolf most likely came from, given the things that Mel, who, like I said, is Little Red Riding Hood, is telling her boyfriend Luke, I feel like I know where the wolf came from, and I feel like I know how the hunter actually played into everything. But given the reveal towards the end, the 11th hour reveal of there's a bigger story that with Little Red Riding Hood that ties her to other characters, and how she gets tied to these different characters is really kind of cool, and I love the way they tie it to it. But I feel like I definitely, that's what drew me in, was the whole fairy tale tying in. And I guess the reason I got interested in it, and in the same way that I got interested in Tales of Arcana Fortune, is because the authors of Arcana Fortune, the Tales of Arcana Fortune, and Crimson the Chromaveiled are very much kindred spirits to me, because I've done the same thing with my book. Tawny Dallas, The Cursebreakers Arrive. There's 3 stories in here, and all 3 stories pull from different fairy tales or different stories. The first story is the Cursed Cookbook. Most of the characters in the Cursed Cookbook are modeled after the Winnie the Pooh characters. The second story in there is they're modeled after Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and the third one is modeled after the story of Frankenstein. And when, I'm reading Tales of Arcana Fortune and she's being pulled into 7 different fairy tales in 7 different nights, or I'm reading Crimson the Chromaveiled, where we're getting to meet Beauty and the Beast and Snow White and the evil queen or whatever, and we're meeting all these different characters, and that's one of the things that I think is really cool, especially between these 2 books, is they both feature Snow White in some capacity, and they both feature Rumpelstiltskin in some capacity. Oh, Hansel and Gretel. You also meet Hansel and Gretel in the story of Crimson and the Chromaveiled. And like I said, the way she pulls everything together and connects everybody and retells the story of, okay, you think you know the story, but actually it's a result of bad communication and you got the wrong story. You got it skewed, very much skewed. And like I said before, when I pulled drew the number in the first place, it's got not only does it have this beautiful artwork of Wygons and wyverns and dragons, but it also gives you a description of how they are different, which is something I didn't know, because I've heard of wyverns and dragons, and I couldn't tell you the difference because I'm not nerdy enough, I guess. But yeah, because like now with the wyverns, it looks like they have 2 feet and wings, and then the dragons have 4 feet and wings. But it says dragons are large reptilian creatures with 4 taloned feet and a pair of wings. They are classified as part of the Dracona order. Dragons are covered in scales and have forked tongues, larger than wyverns. Male dragons are larger than females. Nearly all dragons breathe fire, although some breathe ice. Unlike most reptiles, dragons are not cold-blooded. In fact, their blood consistently stays extremely hot. This is true of both the fire and ice-breathing types. Personalities vary greatly between dragons. Some are friendly with humans, elves, fae, etc. Others prefer to keep their distance from all humanoids. Regardless, dragons rarely attack humanoids unless provoked. Most of the time, adult dragons live alone or in pairs. Wyverns, and I may be saying that wrong, large reptilian creatures with 2 talon feet, a pair of wings, and indent talons that are classified as a part of the Dracona order. They are covered in scales and have forked tongues, have an acid-like venom in their bite and in the stingers at the end of the forked tail. Most females are larger than the males. Due to the aggressive nature of them, their blood temperature is not well documented. Most draconologists believe that they have a very hot blood similar to dragons. Personalities are much meaner than dragons, and they are extremely aggressive towards non-wyverns, and they can sometimes be quite aggressive to others, wyverns as well. Most of the time, adult wyverns are very territorial and live alone. And then you got the Wygons, which are a cross between the 2 large reptilian creatures with 2 taloned feet and a pair of wings that end in talons. They are classified as part of the Dracona order. Wygons are a cross between a male wyvern and a female dragon. A cross between a female wyvern and a male dragon is theoretically possible, but female wyverns are so aggressive towards male dragons, it's unlikely to occur. There's never been a documented case of this happening. I have a very strong affinity towards the female wyverns all of a sudden. Wygons are covered in scales and have forked tongues. Similar to dragons, they can breathe fire and ice. They also have a single stinger at the end of their tail that can inject their target with an acid-like venom. Their blood temperature is also not well documented. Most draconologists believe that they have a very hot blood, similar to dragons. Wygons grow significantly larger than their wyvern and dragon parents. They grow extremely slowly, but most draconologists believe the creatures never stop growing. Female wygons grow larger than males. Typically, they live in packs and are extremely aggressive towards any creature outside of their pack. Nice. But, yeah, so, and the art is done by Lizzie Delano. But yeah, like I said, it's one of those books that, again, if I saw it, I might have given it a passing glance, but I would not probably have picked it up. And then, just like Starved, I would have missed a really great story that I really enjoyed and just couldn't put down. So, I am going to leave a link to the book in the description. There is another book by her, I think. I don't know if it's part of this series. Monstra enter, the living, the dead, and the monsters in between. I don't know that is part of the series. But C, Britt, if you could let us know if A, it is part of the series, or B, if you plan on adding any more books from this world, because as far as I can see, it's a standalone. But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and I don't really know much else I can say about it that isn't me just rambling on about how great the book is, or without me giving spoilers. So I will say the one thing that I really kind of enjoyed was at the beginning of each chapter, there's little quotes. Some of them are from the fairy tales, like, and the queen knew that Snow White had not been slain. And then others are from the Fanglarian prophecy. Princess and the Pea. Oh. One lit and lost, one shielding sought, none hidden neath keen eyes. Underlandish prophecy. And then, well, what is the Fanglorian? Because that's where she's from, is Fangloria. Isn't there a map? I thought there was a map. Yes, there are maps. There's Rundish, Nutherian, and Windland. But yeah, so there's different maps. I love a good map. There were times when I kind of got irritated with Luke just because I thought he was an idiot. But mainly because at one point she is telling him you have to follow directions a certain way to get to where you're needing to go, because if you don't, then you either won't get there or something bad will happen. And the moment that she's not there to remind him of this, somebody else gives him very specific directions. They're like, go west and then go south. And he just like, okay, go southwest, got it. And it's like, no, that's how you got into, like, and it inevitably gets him into a situation because he did that. So, he does get smarter and he does get redemptive, so I'll give him that. But other than that, that is all I've got for you guys today. I will see you in the next video when we do our TBR topic. Alright, bye!